Hi, this is János, it is Real World Audio, and today is a very special episode because I am introducing Steve of Electric Beach Audio, and let's have a look at his website. And here it is. So why am I doing this? Who is Steve? So actually, Steve, he builds speakers and he builds single driver speakers, and he is also building Grande and reported back on it and shared his adventures with me. And I'm going to share his adventures with you as well. And it's really fascinating. You will find it for several reasons, and also we are going to go over through quite a few design considerations of Grande, how you can improve it, how you can change it, and some details. So Steve was super kind, and he wrote me already 2 emails, very detailed ones, and I'm going to use this opportunity to share his thoughts with you and also to answer him in detail because it's easier to do so, or I would say more communicative than just typing away. So this is what Steve shared with me. Hi János, I am very happy to find your Lagrange project as it is such a natural progression for me on my development path over the last 6+ years with void pipes, upward firing drivers, and the direction towards live sound focusing on projection, presence, and unrestrained presentation. I would like to consider making these available as finished speakers for those who don't want to be building themselves, as I have my version of the Frugalhorn quarter-wave pipe DIY design at www.electricbeachaudio.com. I always encourage DIY, but as you have said so eloquently, should be undertaken with a genuine interest to learn and put in the work, not simply expect cheap speakers with little effort. You can't give experience, but you can buy the result. And Steve, yes, you totally have this, and these are my sentiments as well. That this is what I see as a natural progression. That when people who never heard DIY speakers done properly, when they hear them the first time, their first idea is that they want to build it themselves. But not everyone has the time or the ability or the willingness to undertake such a project, and it is kind of understandable that your very first one will be your learning experience, and it takes a little progression until you can really get the most out of it and get it built at a level where your friends build it who've been doing it for years. And the biggest problem for these people is to find someone who builds it for them, and I'm really glad that you are willing to do that, to build speakers for these people. And I really emphasize here the point that those of you who are curious about DIY built speakers, how do they compare to the generic mass-produced commercial versions, I really recommend you to seek out people who have these, who build them, and then have a listen, and listen for yourself, is that and find out what is the difference, why they sound different, how, and then what is it that makes it interesting for you. Some people just their thoughts is that, wow, this, I'm getting great sound at a fraction of a price compared to a commercial product. For many, that's the big turn on. For others, it's like there are qualities in the sound that are not present in the commercial speakers. That's why a lot of people are really captivated by going the DIY route, and that you have so much more freedom of expression. And when we look at Steve's speakers, look, he has unfolded pipes. These are the big standing pipes, and and actually, for those people who never seen unfolded pipes, they look really intimidating on pictures, that they look so tall, but in real life they are really gorgeous. And it is a big concern for many of us that will my wife accept these as speakers. They seem just so tall, but really real life, I've seen women accept void pipes much better than the vast majority of commercial speakers, which are for many part just industrial monstrosities in the eyes of women, and they have really hard time integrating it to the interior of the room, of the living space. And the wooden void pipes with the wooden interior integrate much better to the aesthetics of living rooms. And I never found anyone's spouse who had void pipes to have problems with them. They never complained that they don't like how they fit in the room. But I heard many complaints about other speakers. So that's just something that to just thoughts about that. And then you see, this is what he was mentioning, what Steve mentioned in his emails about the upward firing tweeter, is that I also found that this is a much more natural solution to complement your main driver complement with firing upwards compared to firing the highs, beaming them at you, because at these frequencies our hearing is quite sharp, quite acute, and we use the high frequency information for spatial orientation. And if you are beaming it at you when there are the least problems in the high frequencies, your ears will instantly pick it out that there's something wrong with the imaging, how that speaker projects, because what is going at you and what is the off-axis component. If there's a major imbalance between the two, then when you beam it at yourself, it will, your ears will really pick it up and say, oh, this is fake. This is not natural sound, but it's produced by a box, by a device. But when you fire it up, then basically all the components that your ears are getting are the off-axis, well, actually, compared to the off-axis, compared to the presentation that's coming from the tweeters, everything will be bouncing at you basically back from your room. That will be the majority that you will be getting. So basically the sound will get mapped from your room, and it will present like a really natural acoustic space. So also another shot looked beautiful. And I'm going back to Steve's email, and I don't have a business, just a website to sell a few speakers to fund my enjoyment and building of building and developing them as a personal artistic outlet, and to be driven each day. I will discuss with you further, of course, but first I must learn, make a few cabinets and experiment. I really find this really fantastic, Steve, and it's something that I really always wanted to do myself, just I haven't had the time for it. But I really highly support that you are doing this, and channel listeners, this is a really a big service for everyone, to have someone who is willing to build and has the capacity to build. I have made the first test mule. Initial basic build with birch ply and Mark audio drivers, so I have a benchmark to what I know well. Then I want to experience, judge the effect of some improvements on cabinets, cables, stands, etc. I have a tank band 1320 SJ to compare. Then I will make a cabinet with pine and the Fostex WK drivers. Question. I have no issue to build from the specification you have shared, but one question haunts me, being more familiar with traditional box construction needs. It appears less important for ensuring airtight seals than ensuring a free vibration of the front and rear panels, along with not transferring this energy to the adjacent panels. So what is he talking about? As we all know that in traditional loudspeaker design for the cabinets we buy in the stores, that the number one principle for the 95+% of all speakers you can buy in stores is that the cabinets are made as small as possible. So basically then the air pressure in the developed inside the cabinet is much greater than the air pressure developed in a bigger cabinet. So here in the case of the Grande, the cabinet is several times the amount of the VAS of the driver. So that means that when the driver is moving back and forth, the pressure differential it creates inside the cabinet is a fraction of the pressure differential that you see in commercial cabinet. So if there's no airtight seal, so there's like the slightest amount of air that can move between the panel elements, it's going to have a negligible effect compared to what it does with a traditional cabinet. And he's mentioning that because when I'm screwing the panels together, it is not creating a vacuum tight seal, but it creates, I think, a seal that is tight enough that that air motion is not an issue. Of course, if we would just vacuum pressurize the cabinet, we could see that there's some the air is escaping at several places. However, it's not going to affect the acoustic performance of the cabinet because those extremely tiny areas, they all act as ports. And for ports, they are always tuned to a certain frequency, and these ports being so tight, like a fraction of a millimeter, and this real tightness means that they are tuned to like hundreds of kilohertz frequencies. And when we have an opening in our cabinet, such as these microscopic openings that tune to hundreds of kilohertz to a megahertz frequency, it means that the air can go through that. But when the driver moves and produces the acoustic energy, none of that acoustic energy can go through these minuscule holes because the ports are already shut closed by the time we reach 30 kilohertz or lower frequencies where it could affect the performance of the loudspeaker. So that's why I'm not worried about that. Of course, this is where what Steve says that you need an experienced builder to build speakers, because if you build your speakers, your first attempt might look like a quarter-inch hole on the side of the cabinet. That's really not what we want, and that's going to impact, of course, the result. But when you build it with the attention not to have holes that you can see through to the inside of the cabinet, when you have that case that you put the top on it, and it's a nice flush mount, it's not wobbling on top, then I found that there's no issue with the lack of perfect seals. And also what Steve mentions here. As an example, you elected not to fix the slot port's walls front and back. Would air leakage here not undermine the effectiveness and calculation of the tuning frequency? So actually what I have not emphasized yet is that what I did was that when I first cut the slot walls, I cut them a little bit deeper, a little bit wider than the walls of the cabinet. And when I was assembling them, then I was slowly sanding the slot walls down, so that when I put the front baffle on top, then it sits real tight, and it offers the slightest bit of tension for the front panel, and there's no gap between the internal slot wall and the front panel. But if there would be a small gap, if the gap is like less than a millimeter or so, if it's just like a fraction that you can barely see, the gap is so small, it would not affect the port's effectiveness to a degree to have a big impact on the sound. But here what I wanted, these slot walls, they have double functionality. One function is that they are part of the port, but also what they function is to give a modest support for the front baffle. So the front baffle is not resonating as just a flat panel, but it's resonating as a flat panel that narrows down in the end. So the slot walls actually cut down, shape down the ability of the front panel to vibrate to a little bit more. And actually at this point, for my design that I recommended, I did not attach it hard. You can try playing around with it, and I would say for most people, I don't know if it would be easier or not. I did not recommend tightening it because that, or like a hard gluing or something, because that would limit the later ability to play around with it and fine tune or change the slot walls or do something like that. But certainly what people can do, what I recommend is maybe like try to put a screw at the top of the slot wall back through the front panel to tighten it there, and then see if the slot wall is not really flush the way I just described now, but there's like a tiny gap, then tightening the front wall to it will eliminate that problem, that there might be a small gap between the two. And plus it will also help with that problem to shape the resonances of the front panel, so you are not getting a square resonating, but you are getting a shape that resembles more like what we see with guitars and violins, where the top of the instrument is broken down to a bigger, fatter section and a smaller one. And they do that so that the panel does not just resonate at those two frequencies defined by the width and the length of the panel, but so that those frequencies will not be overbearing, they will not be too strongly present. So by shaping that they're cutting the bottom in a little bit, it takes away those prominent frequency peaks that would appear based on the width and the length of the front panel. So thank you, Steve. That's a very important consideration. And now let's get to the report. What Steve was reporting, how let me just check if it's recording. Oh, and it's almost 20 minutes. So I think now I stop my recording, and we'll continue at the second episode. What was Steve's experience of building a Grande, and where can we go from there? So thank you, Steve, for your really excellent adventures and for sharing it with me. And I think the least I can do is to promote your efforts and then to make you let people know, that if they want it built, then you can do that. And that's because I have had several people asking me, could I build it for them, but I can't because I don't have time for it, and also shipping from Hawaii would kill a lot of efforts. I mean, the cost of it. So thank you, Steve, and we will continue from here.